Hi there, welcome back to Basics, our journey to master electronics one little bit at a time. Think of your favorite gadget, your phone, your laptop, even your car, and now imagine if they just stopped working. Not because the battery died, but because they couldn't handle the noise of their own electricity. Most people know about batteries, but today we are talking about the unsung hero of the circuit board, the capacitor. It's the component that can dump its entire energy load in a millisecond, smooth out a jagged power supply, and even keep your clock running when you pull the plug. Today, in Back to Basics, we dive into the world of electrostatic storage. Let's find out how these little cans and disks actually works. Let's begin. Basically, a capacitor is a passive component that stores energy in an electric field. Unlike a battery, which uses a slow chemical reaction, a capacitor is all about speed. To visualize this, imagine a plumbing system. If a battery is a huge water reservoir, a capacitor is just a small pressure tank. It can't supply water for hours, but if the main pump flickers for a second, the pressure tank kicks in instantly to keep the flow steady. It's the ultimate shock absorber for electricity. It is made of three main parts: two conductive plates and an insulator in between called a dielectric. When we apply voltage, positive charges pile up on one plate and negative charges pile up on the other. The charges would like to reach each other, but the dielectric stops them. That tension is actually stored energy inside the capacitor in the form of an electric field generated by those charges. We measure the ability to store charge in farads, but because a single farad is actually a huge amount of energy, we most often use a small fraction of it: the millifarad, the microfarad, the nanofarad, and the picofarad. 1 millifarad is 1/1000th of a farad. 1 microfarad is 1/millionth of a farad. 1 nanofarad is 1/billionth of a farad. And 1 picofarad is 1/trillionth of a farad. Why do we actually use capacitors? There are three big roles for them: filtering and smoothing, where they turn bumpy DC voltages into a smooth and steady line; energy storage, where they can provide a quick burst, for example for a camera flash or a subwoofer bus hit; and signal coupling, when they allow AC signals, like music, to pass through a circuit while blocking unwanted DC offset. Now, not all capacitors are built the same. There are three types that you'll see the most often. Ceramic capacitors, small, cheap, and not polarized, which means you can plug them either way. They look like little lentils and are perfect to deal with high-speed filtering. Electrolytic capacitors. These look like miniaturized soda cans. They hold a lot of energy, but they are polarized, meaning they have a positive and a negative side. Hook them up backward and things will get really messy. They are perfect for low-speed filtering, for example in DC power supplies. Film capacitors, usually rectangular and green or red. These are very stable and great for audio circuits or high voltage power. And just to give you the full picture, here is a table I made where all types of capacitors are listed. In here, note that MP0 capacitors are just a special kind of ceramic capacitors. Polystyrene and polypropylene are the typical dielectrics of film capacitors. Tantalum capacitors are a type of electrolytic capacitors where the positive plate uses a tantalum metal and the dielectric is made oxidizing one side of the tantalum plate. As the other kind of electrolytic capacitors, these are also polarized. Okay, let's say now we got a bunch of capacitors, all there sitting on the workbench. But how do we know which one is which? Unlike resistors, which use color bands, capacitors use numbers and letters printed on their body. The big problem is different types of capacitors don't speak the same language. And yes, sometimes even same type of capacitors don't. Let me tell you the most common ways to interpret the information on the capacitor's cases. And let's start with the simplest one, the electrolytic capacitors. They are the most straightforward because they are physically larger and the manufacturers have enough room to print the actual values directly on the side. The capacitance is a number followed by the Greek letter mu and a capital F, which stands for microfarads. For example, this one says 100 microfarads, no math required. Follows the maximum voltage rating, in this case 50 volt. Remember that you have to always use the capacitor at a voltage smaller than the rated value, or you will damage the capacitor. Last we have the polarity, this big stripe with a minus sign. That stripe indicates the negative lead of the capacitor, and note also that in new electrolytic capacitors the negative lead is also shorter than the positive one. Let's now take a look at the ceramic capacitors. These capacitors are too small for full labels. Instead, they use a 3-digit code and their unit is always expressed in picofarads or PF. The first two numbers are the value, and the third number indicates how many zeros you have to add to the previous two digits to provide their value in picofarad. Additionally, when the number of picofarads is very small, in the order of only 1 or 2 digits, then the value can be directly expressed with those digits. In that case, we have only 1 or 2 digit numbers. For example, on this one we read the digits 104. That means we have a 10 followed by 4 zeros, and that gives us the number 100,000. So the value is 100,000 picofarad, or 100 nanofarad, or 0.1 microfarad. And yes, we need a little math to interpret the values of these capacitors. Here is another ceramic capacitor. This one has only 2 digits printed on it, 3, 3. This means that the number 33 is the nominal value of the capacitor in picofarad. And lastly, let's take a look at a film capacitor. These capacitors often use a mix. You might see a 3-digit code, like the ceramics, but you will also see a letter at the end, and something also at the beginning sometimes. That letter at the end represents the tolerance, or how accurate the nominal value actually is. But wait, there is more, the rated voltage. This one can be expressed in 3 different ways. It can be written explicitly, or it could be missing, or there could be a code which is prefixed to the capacitor value. If it is expressed in clear, then that is the actual rating. If the voltage rating is not present at all, then it is 50 volt by default. If it is encoded along with the capacitance value, then it can be one of those listed in the EIA standard. Here is the corresponding table for the most common. As an example, here is a film capacitor that reads 2A393J. 2A translates into a voltage rating of 100 volt. 393 translates into a value of 39,000 picofarad, or 39 nanofarad. And the letter J at the end translates into a tolerance of 5%. Other common tolerances are 10% represented with the letter K and 20% represented with the letter M. A pro tip for you now, valid for any kind of capacitor. If the text is rubbed off or too small to read, or has any other problem that prevents you from reading it, don't guess. Use a multimeter capable of reading capacitance. It will give you the live reading of exactly what that component is holding, and it's the only way to be 100% sure before you solder the component in a circuit. Okay, now that we have covered some theory and some practical aspects, it's time to take a look at what I call the wall of shame. If you stay in this hobby long enough, you will eventually blow up a capacitor. It's almost a rite of passage. But to save you the jump scare and the smell of burnt electrolyte, I want to show you the most common ways people accidentally kill or misuse their capacitors and how you can avoid doing the same mistakes. Here are the number 1 mistakes every beginner makes and how to fix or prevent them. Number 1. The polarity pop. Or connecting an electrolytic capacitor backward, with the polarities switched around. The consequence is that the internal dielectric breaks down. The electrolyte boils into gas, and pressure builds up until the safety vent bursts or the whole capacitor pops. To prevent that, always look for the stripe on the side of the capacitor, which marks the negative lead, or look for the longer leg, which marks the positive lead. Number 2. Ignoring the voltage rating, or using a capacitor that is rated exactly for the voltage of the circuit, or, worst, a capacitor with a smaller rating. In such case, an excessive voltage can push the capacitor over its limits, causing it to leak or fail prematurely. Avoid that by always leave a safety margin. Use a capacitor rated 20 to 50% higher than the circuit voltage. If the circuit works at 12 volts, for example, use a 16 volt or even a 25 volt capacitor. Number 3. The ghost charge.
Ouch!
This has more to do with safety actually. Don't assume a capacitor is off just because the device is unplugged. Capacitors, especially if large, can hold a dangerous charge for days or even weeks. Touching the leads can give you a nasty shock, or damage the multimeter if connecting the charged capacitor to it. Before handling the capacitor, discharge it. This can be safely done using a high-value resistor, like, 1K, to bleed the energy off slowly. Number 4. Wrong type for the job. For example, when using an electrolytic capacitor when a ceramic one should have been used instead. The result is usually an erratic behavior of the circuit. For example, using a large electrolytic capacitor near a microcontroller can cause the random reset of the microcontroller itself because of the random electrical noise on the power line that the capacitor cannot get rid of. In such a case, a small ceramic capacitor should be used for decoupling. Remember, electrolytic capacitors are good for bulk energy storage. Ceramic capacitors instead are good for high-speed noise filtering. Number 5. Soldering stress or thermal shock. Holding the soldering iron on the capacitor leads for too long causes excessive heat that can dry out the electrolyte inside the electrolytic capacitor, or it can crack the ceramic layer of a ceramic capacitor, or it can melt the dielectric of a film capacitor. So always use a clean and tinned iron tip to be able to make good soldered joints in a short time. You may want to see my video on soldering techniques for further information. Before closing, here are some suggestions to create your own capacitors starter kit, an assortment of capacitors that covers 95% of the necessities for beginners projects. Like, Arduino, LED circuits, simple audio circuits, and so on. Start with a mix of ceramic and electrolytic capacitors. You can add more later. Ceramic capacitors will be useful as non-polarized noise killers. They are used for decoupling and filtering high-frequency noise. Useful values are 22 picofarad, essential if you are building your own microcontrollers, as they are used in crystal oscillators. 0.1 microfarads, the most common capacitors in existence. Every integrated circuit usually needs one of these right next to its power pin. And 1 microfarad, good for general purpose filtering. Electrolytic capacitors will be useful as polarized power smoothers. These are bulk energy storage for power supplies. The most common values for beginner projects are 10 microfarad, 25 volts or 50 volts, and these are used for small-scale power smoothing. 100 microfarad at 25 volt, great for stabilizing power rails in breadboards projects. 1000 microfarads at 25 volts, the big tanks, used when dealing with motors or long LED strips of LEDs that pull a lot of current. As an alternative, rather than buying individual values, search for capacitor assortment kits on sites like Amazon, Adafruit, or AliExpress. They usually come in a plastic organizer box and are very cheap. When buying a kit, look for capacitors rated at 25 or 50 volts. While 16-volt capacitors are smaller, a 50-volt capacitor can do everything a 16-volt one can, making it much more versatile for a beginner who might accidentally plug it into a higher voltage source. So there you have it, the humble capacitor. It is not just a tiny battery, it is the heartbeat and the filter of almost every circuit you'll ever build. If this back-to-back episode helped you understand that pop in your last project, or if you just learned something you didn't know on capacitors, hit that thumb up button. It really helps the channel out. I also want to hear from you. What's the most spectacular capacitor failure you ever had? Tell me your magic smoke stories in the comments below. And if you are building up your electronics knowledge from scratch, make sure to check out the rest of the Back to Basics playlist right here on the top right corner of the screen. We have already covered a lot of material, and much more will be covered in future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. I'll see you in the next episode, and in the meantime, happy experiments!